My name is Eleanor Harper. I'm 59 years old, and for most of my life, people have looked at my hands and assumed they already knew my whole story. They were wrong. 3 weeks before my only daughter's wedding, the wedding I was paying $65,000 for, she sent me a text message at 11:04 p.m. I still remember the exact time because I stared at my phone screen until the numbers burned into my eyes. Mom, Victoria, and I talked. You can still come if you pay, but don't expect a seat up front. The front is for the Langford family and important guests. Please just let this go. It's not about you. I read it twice. Then I typed back 6 words that came from the deepest part of me. Then I'll keep the $65,000 and you can keep the seat. I hit send, placed my phone face down on the kitchen table, and didn't wait for her reply. I picked it up again at 11:09 and called my lawyer. By 11:37 p.m., formal cancellation notices had already been sent to the venue, the caterer, the planner, and every single vendor. My lawyer had moved first. When Madison called me in tears exactly 1 hour later, the wedding she thought was locked in was already quietly falling apart. The deposits were being refunded to me, the contracts I alone had signed were being terminated, and the dream she'd built on my quiet sacrifice was over. If you've ever been treated like an ATM with a heartbeat instead of a mother, stay with me, because this isn't just a story about a canceled wedding. This is the story of how one woman finally stopped disappearing so her daughter could finally see her. Welcome to a different kind of story time. Not the loud, screaming kind, the quiet, calm kind that stays with you long after the video ends. I'm Eleanor, and this is what happened when I finally chose my dignity over my daughter's perfect day. I didn't yell. I didn't cry on the phone. I simply became the businesswoman I had spent 30 years becoming, the one nobody in that fancy C. Langford circle ever bothered to truly see. And in one calm evening, I took everything back. My hands tell the real story long before my mouth ever does. They're not elegant. The knuckles are a little swollen, the skin dry no matter how much lotion I use, and there's a permanent callus on my right palm from years of tying ribbons, carrying heavy boxes, and gripping the steering wheel of my old Civic at 4 a.m. I started at 27 as a single mother with a toddler and a part-time job at a department store gift wrap counter. Madison's father left when she was 18 months old. One morning, he said he wasn't cut out for family life, and by evening he was gone. No child support, no goodbye note for his daughter. Just silence and a stack of bills. I learned early that love alone doesn't pay the rent. So while Madison slept in her crib beside my bed, I worked. I took every extra shift, stayed late wrapping gifts during the holidays until my fingers bled from paper cuts, and saved every single dollar I could. When I had enough, I started making my own gift baskets at our tiny kitchen table. Beautiful arrangements, with handwritten notes, fresh flowers when I could afford them, and little touches that made people feel seen. That small kitchen table business eventually became Harper's Timeless Gifts. Today we have 4 boutique stores across the state, an online presence that ships nationwide, and a team of 27 employees, many of them single mothers I deliberately gave chances to. I pay good wages, offer health insurance, and I still personally train every new hire on how to tie the perfect bow. But success didn't come overnight. There were years I ate peanut butter sandwiches for dinner so Madison could have proper meals. Years I showed up to her school events in the same black dress because I couldn't afford anything new. I sat in the back row at every recital, every parent-teacher conference, every sports game, smelling faintly of ribbon and cardboard, smiling like it was the best seat in the house. I never wanted Madison to feel poor. I told her every single night that she could be anything, go anywhere, and that her worth had nothing to do with where we started. I believed it with my whole heart. And for a long time, she believed it too. I built this life with these same two hands so my daughter would never have to struggle the way I did. I wanted to give her the fairy tale wedding I never had. The one with the beautiful dress, the perfect venue, and a mother who could finally sit in the front row. Not because I needed the attention, but because I had earned the right to be seen. Looking back now, I realize I spent so many years making myself invisible so she could shine that when the time came for her to choose, she had almost forgotten I was there at all. Madison was always a bright, ambitious girl. She worked hard in school, earned a scholarship to a good university, and graduated with a degree in marketing. I was so proud of her, I cried in the car the entire way home after her commencement ceremony. She had broken the cycle. She was never going to have rough hands like mine. When she met Ethan Langford at a charity gala 2 years ago, I genuinely rejoiced for her. The Langfords were old money. Or at least they carried themselves like they were. Victoria, Ethan's mother, came from a family that once owned several car dealerships in the region. They lived in a big house on the hill, drove luxury cars, and knew how to make people feel small with a polite smile. At first, I was welcomed, sort of. Victoria would compliment my entrepreneurial spirit in that sweet but distant way people use when they want to acknowledge your success without actually respecting how you earned it. She never missed a chance to mention how charming it was that I built my business from such humble beginnings. I let it slide. I told myself it didn't matter. My daughter was happy, in love, and stepping into a world that offered her the security I had fought so hard to give her. So when Madison asked if I would help pay for the wedding, I didn't hesitate. $65,000. Every cent planned carefully from company profits and personal savings. I wanted her day to be perfect. I attended every planning meeting I was invited to. I offered ideas, paid deposits, and signed every contract myself. The venue, the caterer, the florist, the photographer, even the string quartet. My lawyer, Margaret, reviewed everything. She warned me, as she always does, to keep control. You're the responsible party on all of these, Ellie. Remember that. I smiled and said I trusted my daughter. Deep down, I wanted to believe this wedding would finally bring our two families together. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to shift. Madison started using phrases like the Langford way and what people will expect. She became quieter on our Sunday calls. When I offered to join a tasting or a fitting, there was always a gentle excuse. Victoria already handled it, Mom. She has such great taste. I told myself it was normal. Brides get stressed. Future mothers-in-law get involved. I kept writing the checks and swallowing the small hurts, because I believed love sometimes means stepping back so your child can step forward. If only I had known then how far back they actually wanted me to step. The changes were subtle at first, like the way water slowly erodes stone. Victoria would suggest adjustments to the guest list. Suddenly, there were more Langford relatives, more business associates, more important people who simply had to be accommodated. My side of the family, my sisters, my longtime employees, the friends who had supported us for decades, quietly shrank on the spreadsheet. It's just that the Langfords have such a large circle, Victoria would say with her perfectly practiced smile. A wedding like this reflects on the entire families standing in the community. I nodded and stayed silent. I reminded myself that I was funding this celebration out of love, not ego. If a few of my cousins had to sit further back so Madison could have her dream day, I could live with that. But the exclusions grew sharper. At the engagement party, the slideshow featured generations of Langford family photos. Vacations in Europe, country club events, elegant Christmas cards. There wasn't a single picture of me and Madison from the early years. No images of us eating cereal together at 2 a.m. when she had nightmares. No photos of me cheering at her soccer games in my work apron. When Victoria introduced me to her friends, it was always the same. This is Eleanor, Madison's mother. She owns a little gift shop business. So entrepreneurial. A little gift shop business. I smiled through it all. I told myself I was being too sensitive, that this was Madison's moment, not mine. I even convinced myself that being in the background was an act of maternal love. Then came the dress fitting. I had paid for Madison's dream gown in full. When I arrived at the boutique, Victoria greeted me warmly and suggested I wait in the lounge area, because the fitting room is quite small. I sat there for nearly 3 hours with a lukewarm coffee, while laughter and excitement drifted from the back room. That night, alone in my car, I finally let a few tears fall. Not because I needed to be the center of attention, but because I was slowly being erased from my own daughter's most important chapter, and I was paying for every page of it. Still, I held on. I kept telling myself that once the wedding was over, everything would return to normal. Madison would remember who raised her. She would see me again. I was wrong. The real turning point came on a quiet Tuesday evening when a draft of the seating chart was accidentally shared in the group chat. My name was listed in row 7. Behind the Langford cousins. Behind Ethan's colleagues. Behind people I had never met. Row 7 at my only daughter's wedding. That was the moment the leash finally started to feel too tight. I called Madison that same evening, trying to keep my voice calm and reasonable. "Sweetheart, I saw the seating chart. There must be some mistake. I'm in row 7. There was a pause. The kind of pause that told me everything I needed to know. "Oh, Mom, Victoria feels strongly that the front rows should be reserved for the Langford family and their close circle. It's about presentation, you know? But you'll still be there. It's not a big deal where you sit." Not a big deal. Those 3 words landed heavier than I expected. I was the mother of the bride. I had raised her alone. I had paid for nearly the entire wedding. And yet, in their eyes, I was still the woman from the little gift shop who should be grateful just to be invited. I tried one more time. "Madison, I'm your mother. I've been front row for every important moment in your life. Don't you think I've earned that seat?" Her answer came softly, but it carried Victoria's voice underneath. "Mom, please don't make this about you. Just handle the payments and let us manage the details." Victoria really knows how these events should look. Just handle the payments. That phrase echoed in my head long after we hung up. Later that night, while I sat in my living room with a cup of tea, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Madison. "Mom, Victoria and I talked. You can come to the wedding if you still pay, but don't expect a seat up front. The front is for the Langford side and important guests. Please just let this go. It's not about you." I stared at the screen for a long time. Something inside me shifted. Not with anger, but with a cold, crystal-clear certainty I hadn't felt in years. This wasn't about a chair. This was about whether my daughter had learned to see me as a person worthy of respect, or simply as a funding source. With a pulse. I didn't cry. I didn't call her back immediately. Instead, I walked over to my desk, opened the green folder where I kept every wedding contract, and began reading them again with fresh eyes. That night, I understood what my lawyer Margaret had quietly reminded me a year earlier. I was the sole responsible party on every single agreement. The power had always been in my hands. Now, I just had to decide whether I was willing to use it. I didn't answer Madison's text right away. Instead, I opened the green folder and reviewed every contract line by line. My name, Eleanor Harper, was the only signature on every document. I had insisted on that from the beginning, not because I expected betrayal, but because 30 years in business had taught me to never hand over blank checks. At 11:09 p.m., I called Margaret. She answered on the third ring, voice sleepy but alert the moment she heard it was me. I told her everything, the seating chart, the text, the years of small erasures. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "Ellie, are you sure?" she asked. "I've never been more sure of anything," I replied. "I want out. Exercise every cancellation clause. Start tonight." Margaret didn't waste time. She began making calls immediately, first to the venue's emergency line, then the caterer, then the wedding planner. By 11:37 p.m., formal written notices were sent and timestamped. The process had officially begun. I finally replied to Madison with the 6 words I had chosen carefully. "Then I'll keep the $65,000 and you can keep the seat." Then I put my phone on silent and sat in the quiet of my living room. I didn't feel triumph, I felt heavy. This was my daughter's dream I was dismantling. But it had also become a public declaration that I was unworthy of basic respect. The next few hours were some of the longest of my life. I knew Madison would call, and she did. At 12:12 a.m. Her voice was shaking with tears. "Mom, what did you do? The venue just called me. They said you canceled everything. The deposits are being refunded. Mom, the wedding is in 3 weeks." I kept my voice steady. "I did exactly what you asked me to do, sweetheart. You said I could come if I paid, but not to expect a front row seat. So I chose to keep my money and let you keep the seating arrangement you wanted." She was sobbing now. "You're ruining my life. Victoria is going to be furious. Ethan's family can't afford this. Why would you do this to me?" That question, "Why would you do this to me?" cut deep, as if I were the one who had spent months slowly pushing her own mother out of the picture. I took a slow breath and spoke from the heart. "Madison, I didn't do this to you. I stopped allowing you and Victoria to do it to me." Madison's crying grew louder on the phone. "Everything is already paid for. The invitations went out. People are flying in. You can't just destroy this." I stayed calm the same way I had learned to stay calm during difficult business negotiations. "Sweetheart, I didn't destroy anything. I simply stopped funding my own humiliation. For months, I've watched myself being erased from your special day while my money kept everything running. Tonight, you made it crystal clear where I stand. So I chose to stand somewhere else." She tried every angle: guilt, anger, fear. She told me Victoria had been counting on this wedding to maintain their family's image, that Ethan would be devastated, that I was being selfish and vindictive over just a seat. I listened to it all. Then I said something I had never said to her before. "Madison, I have loved you with everything I have since the day you were born. I worked nights so you could sleep peacefully. I gave up my own dreams so you could chase yours. But love is not a one-way street where I keep giving while you and your future in-laws treat me like a walking checkbook. I deserve respect. And if I have to teach you what that looks like by saying no, then that's what I'll do." The call ended with her still crying and me sitting in silence, heart heavy but strangely clear. The next morning, Victoria called. I let it go to voicemail at first. When I finally called her back from my car between store visits, her tone had shifted from polite to icy. "Eleanor, this is completely unacceptable. You are embarrassing your daughter and our family. Reinstate the payments immediately." I answered with one word: no. The silence on the other end was deeply satisfying. Victoria continued, her voice rising. "Do you have any idea what this will do to our reputation? People will talk. They'll say the bride's mother, that little gift shop woman, threw a tantrum and ruined everything." I replied quietly but firmly, "Let them talk. The people who matter will understand exactly why I did what I did. And Victoria, the only reputation being damaged here is the one you tried to build on my money while treating me like I was beneath you." She hung up on me. Over the following days, the Langford family's carefully maintained image began to crack. They didn't have the funds to replace what I had withdrawn. The wedding they had been planning as their grand comeback was suddenly impossible. And in the middle of that chaos, my daughter started to see clearly for the first time in over a year. Madison showed up at my house the following Saturday morning without warning. She looked exhausted, eyes red from crying. No Victoria, no Ethan, just her. We sat at the same kitchen table where I had helped her with homework for years. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she broke down. "I introduced you as my mom who owns some gift shops at the engagement dinner," she whispered. "I let Victoria push you to the side at every event." I told myself it was just wedding stress, but I knew it was wrong. I was ashamed of where I came from because I was scared of losing the life they offered me. I reached across the table and took her hands in mine, my rough, hard-working hands holding her soft ones. "I know, baby. I watched it happen, and I let it continue longer than I should have because I loved you so much I was willing to disappear. But I can't do that anymore. Not even for you." Later that afternoon, Victoria arrived unannounced with Ethan in tow. She swept into my modest home like she was doing me a favor by being there. The confrontation that followed was quiet but intense. Victoria tried one last time to bully me into submission, offering a compromise seat somewhere in the middle rows. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "You wanted my money but not my presence. You can't have one without the other. Those days are over." Ethan stood silently the entire time, avoiding eye contact. Madison watched her fiancé carefully. In that moment, she saw the same pattern of weakness she had been participating in for months. When Victoria finally stormed out, Madison stayed behind. She looked at me with new eyes and said the words I had been waiting to hear for over a year. "I don't want to become like them, Mom. I'm so sorry." For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something close to peace. The wedding never happened. Most of the $65,000 came back after the vendors rebooked the dates. I didn't celebrate. I simply felt relieved. A few weeks later, Madison quietly ended her engagement. She told me she realized she had almost married someone who would watch his mother disrespect me and say nothing. The same way she had once stayed silent. She moved back closer to me for a while and started working part-time at one of my stores. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to understand the hands that built everything she had taken for granted. One evening, she took a photo of my hands while I was tying a ribbon. She framed it and placed it in her new apartment with a small plaque underneath that reads, "These hands built everything." We still have work to do. There are moments when the old guilt and distance try to creep back in. But we talk about it openly now. We're learning how to love each other without losing ourselves in the process. If you've ever had to earn your place in your own family, if you've ever been loved conditionally, or if you've spent years making yourself smaller so others could feel bigger, I see you. Your worth was never up for negotiation. Your generosity should never become a leash. Love people deeply. Give generously. But never pay for the privilege of being treated as less than you are. Keep your dignity and your love in the same hand. They cost the same to earn. I'm Eleanor Harper. I'm a mother, a businesswoman, and a woman who finally remembered her own worth. And I'll never forget it again.